Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello there, cosmic friends. How are you all feeling after the past few days of electrifying planetary activity? This is Cycles of Time, weekly forecast for the Wheel of the Year, week 9. And this is your forecast for May 19th to 25th, 2025. This episode welcomes Gemini season, Saturn enters Aries, and we are in the gate of the now in human design this week. So I just got back home to Santa Fe after spending over a month traveling through the raw beauty and elemental wildness of Costa Rica and Panama, and my arrival home couldn't have lined up with more electric astrology. It's been a hit the ground running kind of energy. On Saturday, May 17th, this last Saturday, the sun met Uranus in Taurus for a cazimi, a Uranian cazimi, and honestly, it felt like coming back down to Earth with a jolt of clarity and a bit of cosmic static still buzzing in my system. Sun-Uranus conjunctions always bring some sort of breakthrough or lightning bolt of surprise. They happen once a year as the sun orbits around the zodiac and meets up with Uranus, who takes about 7 years per sign to go through the zodiac. So this is the last Sun-Uranus conjunction in earthy Taurus for the rest of our lifetimes. And for me, it showed up as this deep inner knowing that something in my values has shifted. It was a very powerful trip that sometimes you can't really recognize how powerful a journey is until you get back home and get back into kind of your tried and true routines and recognize that something internal has shifted. So really feels like Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Taurus, Venus is all about values. And I do feel like this final Uranus in Taurus, cazimi, had a lot to do with what I value shifting and how I show up in the world. So after I was immersed in so much lush and living and interconnected nature, I can really feel now that my relationship to time and to creativity and resourcefulness feels very different now. More in tune with the slow intelligence, the slow yet busy intelligence of the wise and truly interdependent Earth and all of her creatures. So Santa Fe can feel I've mentioned before that Santa Fe is my astrocartography Neptune line as well as a Uranus line, actually. And it feels very Neptunian here, very connected to like the outer realms of the universe for me. Very big sky country and very easy to zoom out into the stars. And so being in Costa Rica and Panama, where there's so much earth, so much jungle, so many living creatures all around at any given moment, it really brings up, being there for a significant amount of time, brings up a more grounded and embodied feeling as like my animal body compared to my spiritual, mental, kind of zoomed out perspective here in Santa Fe. So it's pretty palpable to note the difference after that much time away. Like I mentioned, Uranus takes around 7 years to travel through each sign of the zodiac, and the sun has made an annual conjunction over the past 7 years to add a little spark of innovation and change to whatever house in your chart is ruled by Taurus. And so this sun and Uranus conjunction was at 27 degrees Taurus. So it'll be the last time that the sun will activate Uranus in that house for the rest of our lifetimes. By the time the sun hits this part of the sky next year, Uranus will have moved into Gemini. So where it will stay for the next 7 years. So I'm definitely feeling from the collective that this was a pretty big transit for people somehow. And for me, this was my final activation of my 10th house of career and public image. So Uranus and the sun are in my 10th house right now. So I was kept up all night on Saturday, just buzzing with downloads on how my past 7 years of career transformation and public perception transformation has kind of culminated. So when Uranus entered Taurus 7 years ago in 2018, that was the year I had a baby, I became a mom, and I gradually over the next few years, but pretty much right in 2018 when I had a baby, I left the company that I started and then went back and then quit again and then kind of unraveled myself from this nonprofit fundraising tech company that I founded in 2011, which was 7 years before that, and when Uranus entered my ninth house. So 7 years later, yeah, I kind of took a step back in order to be present as a parent and also to deepen into the worlds that I'm now swimming in of astrology and human design, and somatics, and all of these systems of thought and just deep research, breath work, all of the things. And so at this last Uranus Sun conjunction in my 10th house over this last weekend, I really felt a cathartic and sudden awareness come over me about what it is that I'm truly wanting to offer the world and how I want to be of service, and kind of it really was just like a distillation of all of the things that I've been studying and transforming within that realm of my chart over the past 7 years since Uranus has been there. So really big stuff. It feels like it kind of just came about as I'm recording this episode. So I'm not going to make any bold declarations currently, but my big breakthrough lightning bolt moments with the Uranus Sun Cazimi really does involve a few changes and pivots here at Astrosomatics and Cycles of Time. Mostly as far as the wording, the verbiage, how I'm phrasing what I do, and really just leaning a lot more into the heart and away from the kind of mental proof oriented kind of dry clinical side of things. So there will be some changes coming. So stay tuned for some announcements in that arena over the next few weeks. I'm really excited about these changes. It felt really, really clear as it came through in the middle of the night with Uranus activated by the sun. At the same time, over this past weekend, Jupiter in Gemini has been squaring the lunar nodes, the north and south node, which are currently sitting along the Pisces and Virgo axis. So we had a lot of mutable sign activation in the skies. And Jupiter is the great expander, the great benefic. It's this kind of like brings a lot of energy and expansion to wherever it's touching. And so squaring the lunar nodes kind of feels like a bit of a crossroads moment where the question really is, can I trust my intuition and my higher vision even when it doesn't line up with what I've known before? It's this moment of tension between kind of where we've been with the South Node in Virgo of kind of like analysis, overthinking, service in a very tangible, worldly way, and then kind of expanding the transition to the North Node in Pisces, which is service on the more spiritual and unboundaried kind of more mutative side of things. And it's still this axis of service and this axis of spirituality, but we're moving with the North Node in Pisces toward a more collective, intuitive knowing than Virgo. So that really felt like the universe was asking me to integrate the dreamier and more intuitive wisdom that I picked up during my travels with the grounded practicality that I tend to lean on at home. I think that, again, there's this sky earth dynamic happening between the desert and the jungle kind of vibes that I'm really picking up on. And I am definitely feeling this tension between wanting to map everything out and spreadsheet it. And over the past couple of episodes, you've probably heard me saying, like, put the spreadsheets down. And I'm, of course, speaking to myself there because it's hard for me to do as a Virgo sun sometimes. I want to have like the perfect map of how things are going to go. But sometimes life has to just unfold a little more poetically and messily and emotionally and real. And I'm really ready for that. This Taurus season is all about values and about sensuality and about just feet in the dirt, feet on the earth. And the cow sitting on the field of flowers and just like not really thinking too much about what's coming up next beyond this present moment. And that's really fitting for this week's solar transit through the gate of contribution and the gate of the now, which are both about being in the present moment, being authentically who we are, and letting that radiate outward. And that in itself has a lot to do with kind of my pivots and epiphanies about where this project is heading as well. So I will keep you posted with all that. But just curious how the weekend's energy showed up for you all out there in TV land. Everybody listening, have you felt impacted by the Uranus Sun Cazimi or by this Jupiter squaring the nodes? Of course, there's lots of other transits happening, but those ones felt particularly potent at this moment in time for me. So moving on to this week in the Wheel of the Year, we are in Medicine Wheel direction south, the direction of fire, the direction of youth, coming out of childhood into a fiery youth, the direction of summer, and the direction of kind of the mental aspects of life, kind of being alive in the intellect in that season. In the Wuxing five element cycle, we are in the season of fire. The pagan season of Beltane has passed. We're headed towards Litha or midsummer at the end of Gemini season. So we have a whole zodiac season ahead before our next pagan holy day. The zodiac season is starting Gemini this week, May 20th through June 20th. So we're wrapping up Taurus season at the beginning of the week. And again, in the I Ching and Human Design Wheel of the Year, we're moving from Gate 8, which is the gate of contribution, known as holding together or union in the I Ching. That's Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday through next Monday, the sun will be in Gate 20, which is known as the gate of the now or contemplation in the I Ching. And let's see, as far as planetary transits go this week, we have a big one that we'll dig into in this episode. Saturn is entering Aries to meet up with Neptune, not in an exact conjunction. That won't happen until February 2026. And if you're in the astro world, you've definitely probably heard speak of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the 0 point of Aries, at the beginning of the zodiac, that is ushering a new era in a similar way to Pluto entering Aquarius and Uranus entering Gemini. Jupiter will be entering Cancer. All of the outer planets are moving or have just recently moved into new signs. And so that really ushers in a lot of new energy in late 2025 through 2026 and into 2027. We're kind of off to the races with a whole new cycle. So Saturn entering Aries is a big deal. It's been in Pisces for 2.5, almost 3 years, and it will retrograde back into Pisces again in September through February, but we have a little dip into Aries right now from May through September through the summer to really get a taste of what that energy feels like, very close to Neptune in Aries as well. So we'll start off with Gemini season, the solar buzz of Gemini season. And if you are a paid subscriber to my Substack at astrosomatics.substack.com, you'll be getting your Gemini season workbook soon, which comes with journaling prompts and a whole bunch of information about the human design gates of the season, about the elemental aspects of Gemini season. And it's just a really nice kind of big book of all things Gemini. So you can become a paid subscriber if you want to receive those every month in your inbox to have kind of a guided journey through the season ahead from all of these different perspectives. But yeah, basically, I would say that Gemini season brings a focus of breath, bees, and becoming. Just like that alliteration. And it moves into Gemini on Tuesday, May 20th, where the energy's gonna shift on that solar level from the grounded and earthly slow dance of Taurus into something lighter and quicker and more curious. I really like the association of curiosity with Gemini. Gemini is associated with childhood in the cycle of human development. And it's that time in life when we're just starting to name the world around us and babble a lot and chit chat with each other and make sense of it all through language and imitation, with that twin aspect there, and experimentation. So Taurus was the toddler, Aries is the infant, Taurus is the toddler, who's kind of figuring out the world through touching it and smelling it and tasting it as toddlers do. And then we move into this very linguistic Mercury-ruled Gemini season where there's a kind of open wonder in Gemini, which is this desire to explore just for the sake of learning something new and to bounce ideas off of each other and to chit chat with fellow siblings and neighbors and friends. And that spirit's very much in the air this week as we deepen into spring and get closer and closer to summer. A lot of kids are getting out of school. I'm hearing a lot more kids around the neighborhood at the playgrounds, and just there's a certain excitement in the air that's really cute and interesting. And at least in North America, the school system, Gemini season kind of ushers that last week of school vibes. And yeah, you hear that kind of childhood chatter, which is so Gemini. In the body, I always like to relate the zodiac season to the life cycle, the human life cycle, and also in the body, the zodiac man, with medical astrology. And in the body, Gemini rules the lungs. And there's something really beautiful about that connection between Gemini and the lungs. The lungs are where we exchange with life around us, our inhales and exhales being an exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen from our bodies and the air, our environment. And so we're taking in the world and releasing what we no longer need, moment by moment, breath by breath. So Gemini season is an invitation to breathe more deeply and let curiosity be the breath of your mind, and engage in more of those light touch connections that keep life feeling fresh and alive. Gemini always makes me think of bees and other pollinators. Bees, flies, butterflies, all of the pollinators who flit from flower to flower and cross-pollinate as they go, really carrying life between spaces just by following their instincts. I got back to Santa Fe and my roses, wild roses out by my aspen trees in front of my house are in full bloom, just the most beautiful pink. And I walked out there and just was overcome with this like beautiful Taurus Gemini cusp kind of joy. And there were a lot of bees pollinating. So I posted a picture of that on the Substack version of this podcast because I just thought it was so beautiful. It's so Gemini, like bees. I think of twin bees or twin butterflies. I like thinking about, yeah, it's like two bees buzzing around together. It's such the image that comes to me. And I think that it's such a beautiful metaphor for how we communicate and how we share ideas. And pollination is like little sparks of connection that bring information from flower to flower, and they can ripple outward and create whole ecosystems of possibility and create the fruit of the season. They're making fruit possible, and the bounty of the harvest later in the season. So Gemini really takes us from that stillness and sensuality of Taurus season into a dynamic and interconnected vibe. So moving on to human design, the human design gates of the week are gate 8 and then moving into gate 20 on Wednesday through the rest of the week. So Monday and Tuesday, the sun continues to move through gate 8 in the human design mandala. 8 is located in the throat center, and it's known as the gate of contribution. This gate invites us to ask, how am I offering my unique voice and gifts to the world? It's all about trying to, not trying to fit in, but and not trying to do what's popular necessarily, but as that final Taurus gate, it's about really leaning into your unique values and your very self-oriented, like it's like a toddler in their fullest toddlerhood before they enter that chatty childhood. They're just like, oh yeah, I figured out the world. I like stuck my finger in that little socket and I know that about electricity now. Like I tasted that bar of soap and I know about that bar of soap now. And so with that toddler mentality of like having experienced everything through the sensual, through our 5 senses, 6 senses, we kind of reach that last gate, and it's all about contribution through our own uniqueness, through our full understanding of the world, through our senses. And so, yeah, gate 8 is about style. It's about expressing ourselves in our most authentic sense and expressing who we are in a way that feels really aligned and true no matter who is watching. Like I mentioned last week, I talked about gate 8 a little bit more, but gate 8 corresponds with hexagram 8 in the I Ching, which is called holding together or union. And that speaks to the power of shared purpose. The lower trigram is earth, which brings groundedness and support. And the upper trigram is water, which represents depth and emotion. So these two trigrams together reminds us that real connection happens when we bring our depth forward in grounded ways. And in the Gene Keys, gate 8 moves from the shadow of mediocrity to the city of exquisiteness with the gift of style. And this tells me that it's a good time to step out and let your essence shine, to show your style. You know, we're entering like summer vacay mode. So, I mean, hot girl summer, who knew how long that would last in like the meme culture, but, and all the variations on that theme. But I think that, yeah, it's time to just own your style and own your essence and feel exquisite, not in order to attract attention, but just to offer something beautiful. It's that flower blooming in the field that's ready to be pollinated. It's ready for the bees and butterflies to come and land on it, and because they can't resist. It's just being its full essential self. So that is the last gate of Taurus season, gate 8. Unity, coming together, contribution, showing our flower to the world. And then on Wednesday, the 21st, the sun enters gate 20. This is a day after, so it's right on the cusp there. It's the first full gate of Gemini season, gate 20, and it'll transit there through Monday, May 26th. Gate 20 is a really powerful gate. It is one of the parts of the channel for manifesting generators, kind of the manifesting generator channel. If you're familiar with human design, it's the 2034 or the 2055 that kind of connects the throat down to the energy centers and makes you a manifesting generator if you have that channel active. But it's called the gate of the now, and it's also in the throat center. And for me, it's extremely powerful as I dig into contemplating it, because it's where my natal Chiron sits in my chart, the wounded healer. And yeah, I've always been really curious about that part of Gemini. It's been this kind of elusive thing for me, like Chiron and Gemini, what is that? And leaning into gate 20 and learning more about it has been a huge, another epiphany on top of the Uranus Sun cazimi. It's been really powerful for me to learn more about and to experience. This gate 20 is the energy of spontaneous and embodied presence. It's not about what you think you should say or do. It's more about what arises when you're fully rooted in the present moment. Gate 20 emphasizes the importance of living in the now and speaking from a place of inner stillness. And it encourages conscious awareness in every moment, moment by moment, breath by breath, which allows you to communicate and respond in alignment with that present energy. In the I Ching, hexagram 20 is known as contemplation. It's another lower trigram of Earth, as we're moving through all of these lower trigram Earth for the next couple of weeks. And the upper trigram is wind. So we move from water over Earth last week to wind over Earth. And this imagery suggests a kind of still, attentive perception where you have the still earth, but the wind can really stir up truth, kind of like a breeze through the trees. It's that pollinator energy again. So wind over earth feels very akin to, I'm actually looking out my window and there is a breeze through the trees right now as the earth sits in its stillness with the flowers blooming. So it feels pretty like spot on in the physical world from where I sit. The gene key of 20 travels from the shadow of superficiality to the city of presence, and the gift is self-assurance. So this is where it really got interesting for me. Superficiality here refers to an overemphasis on the mind, an overemphasis on the intellect, and also an overemphasis on appearances and external validation. In this shadow frequency of superficiality, it's easy to detach and numb and avoid the deeper workings of life, or else, on the other side, to stay way too busy and hectic on the surface of things, kind of buzzing around from one flower to the next without allowing ourselves to get into a deeper relationship with life. And so you think about like a bee being the symbol of Gemini season. And I'm sure you've probably seen those pictures. If you haven't, you should. Just look it up. But there's pictures of these bees that are like sleeping in flowers. They're just covered in pollen and they're cuddled up in the petals of a flower. And, just like watching a bee pollinate a flower when it's like really doing its job, it's getting in there. It's like it's getting deep in the moment of that flower. It's not like thinking like, oh, I have like this flower and that flower and that flower that I have to go pollinate, so I better do it all, because if you're doing it that way, you're not going to get, it's not going to work as well. In Costa Rica and Panama, I watched a lot of hummingbirds and a lot of bees and butterflies and spent time just sitting and observing and witnessing this beautiful dance and really noticing that sometimes when humans are around, it seems like they're flitting about quite quickly, just like one flower to the next, because they have the capacity to do that. However, when I sat for a longer period of time, so that they stopped thinking of me as a threat and just as part of the landscape, I was able to witness like how long a bee or a hummingbird will stay at a particular flower, pollinating that one singular bloom. And I was struck by that because that feels really connected to gate 20 here. Knowing that like, if we stay on the superficial level of, just looking at all of the things that need to be done, it can be easy to just either not do any of it or to kind of buzz around from one thing to the next. And this gate is really about being in a deep state of presence, which is a deep relationship with life in the current moment. So it really resonates for me with my Chiron wound in this gate. I feel like a lot of my earlier life was really about moving through layers of over-explaining or hiding behind intellect. And I've been learning over the course of my adulthood to simply show up and speak from how I feel in the moment and linger on a thing longer than I think I should, in my mind if it feels right, and trust that it's enough. Um, Chiron is the wounded healer, and this asteroid or comet planetoid that orbits in between Saturn and Uranus. And Chiron is this kind of, it's this liminal space between the outer planets and the inner planets, between like what is seen and what is unseen. And Chiron is half man, half beast, and so there's this kind of like being in that liminal area between two worlds with Chiron. And Chiron in myth was a wounded healer who had a kind of wound that could not be healed, but then he healed a lot of other people. And so similar to the like evolutionary stages within the gene keys that I talk about each week, Chiron as an archetype also moves through an evolution of energies that goes from the wound to the teacher to the alchemist. And I took a really great course through Astro Butterfly about Chiron a few years back that really thought about Chiron in this multifaceted way. That's not just like that's where your wound is, but it's actually like the wound is where the light gets in, and that is where Chiron, energy, if you work with your wound, this place that is kind of a recurring theme of like an unhealed wound, that is really where you can teach and where you can bring a lot of turn water into wine, essentially. So I've loved contemplating this gate 20, in regards to my own evolution in my life, from superficially focusing solely on like a mental experience to finding more and more self-assurance over the course of time. And that's been through the process of slowing down and embodiment and somatic practices. For an entire year, I practiced the presence process, which is a book and a system created by Michael Brown. And that was part of my breathwork facilitator training that was almost a year long. And this process of it was simple breathing and mantras and a process that attunes you to the present moment. It was a huge alchemical leap away from my superficial mental patterns that had continued to wound me in the past, and that I kept going back to because I thought that they were the only way to be, as a kind of protective mechanism. And I know I'm talking a lot about my personal stuff in this episode, but that's just how it is. I think that gate 20 is the first gate of Gemini season. There's so much goodness there, and it really, all of this chironic energy for me in this gate is relating to kind of my ideas about how I'm going to change this project in the upcoming months. I've even my title, Astrosomatics, my working title on Instagram and my website and my business, as well as cycles of time, to me, all of a sudden feel very dry and very trying to be too clean and too academic or too clinical, or I think a lot of times I will err on the side of caution and over intellectualize something, or make it like it has to appeal to the lowest common denominator or to everyone. And that's definitely a chironic wound, that seeing that show up with the word superficiality in my in the gene keys for this energy of this week. I've never really thought about that as being superficial, but I think sometimes by making something that is a little more kind of like cold and dry, it leaves the emotion out of it, and emotion is the place where we truly connect. And I know that so deeply, but for some reason in naming my offerings and things like that, I have a certain wound about like wanting it to be really like mentally understood, and that can oftentimes backfire. So gets a little hint as to where I'm headed with my changes to evolve past the shadow of superficiality and flitting from flower to flower or trying to be everything for everyone into the gift of self-assurance is really recognizing that, to quote Gene Key's creator Richard Rudd, he says that your self-assurance is directly equivalent to your ability to escape being a victim of your mind. And I loved that when I was reading through the book this week, the Gene Key's book. Again, your self-assurance is directly equivalent to your ability to escape being a victim of your own mind. So this isn't just about feeling confident externally, but it's about this deep inner certainty that what you're doing and saying and who you're being at any given moment is exactly right and exactly who you should be without having to prove it with over-explanation, for example. The city or spiritual accomplishment of June 20 is presence. And this is characterized by a deep and rhythmic breathing with life, breathing in and out the current moment that brings awareness and clarity. So presence in this case is about being fully engaged and aware of every detail of the moment, not as a sequence of moments, but with kind of this simultaneous memory that works both backwards and forwards. When you really drop into the present moment, there's a certain timelessness to it. Like that bee diving into the flower, kind of forgetting about all the other flowers for a minute so that it can really be there doing its job, pollinating, by being attentive to each moment as it comes. And so I think omnipresent, this notion of omnipresence might be a better word for this frequency than simple presence. It's the idea that by getting involved in one specific thing and being self-assured with that experience of the moment, we also can be aware that there are many other simultaneous moments happening, but we're not having that FOMO of things passing us by. It's more like JOMO, joy of missing out. So I love that. Instead of fear of missing out, it's joy of missing out, because you're not really missing out when you're fully enmeshed and absorbed in your current present moment. So also when I was reading through the chapter in the Gene Keys about Gene Key 20 or Gate 20, it talks about about insects, actually, about insects buzzing in the spring air. And this, he doesn't talk about the associations with each gene key or each gate and the zodiac season, but as I put it together and synthesize the imagery that comes forth for me with Gemini of pollinating bees and butterflies, I thought it was super interesting that Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys also speaks about insects and this seemingly chaotic world of insect life, where there's this time of year, there are many pollinating bugs darting around in their own little orbits, doing their own little thing and just seeming so insanely busy. That was definitely in Costa Rica so apparent, like the amount of bugs and insects and birds and different animals that I saw just working so hard. Leafcutter ants just going in a trail carrying their leaves with their little army leader ants who are patrolling the perimeter and just working nonstop with carving trails throughout the jungle. And one day I sat and I witnessed these amazing birds called Orendopala montezumas, which a Costa Rican person there called them computer turkeys because they make this computer digital kind of gobble sound. But they're these huge birds the size of toucans, and they were building these incredible nests in a tree that I had privilege to sit by and watch for a while. And we talked to some of the people whose ranch it was, where we got to bird watch and have some lunch and walk around the property. And they were just explaining these birds as the hardest working birds, where they just go back and forth in order to get materials for these huge hanging nests and they go back and forth from their tree out into other trees and, to get more materials and bring them back. And it's just like this non-stop flight path. And it reminded me of the leafcutter ants and just so many of the animals. When you're in close connection with them, you're seeing that they're just like so busy, right? And so that could seem like, oh, we're superior. We're not as busy as humans. But the cool thing about bees and butterflies and birds and these animals that are doing the thing that they need to be doing in the present moment, like when you zoom out, you can see that they're performing essential roles in larger harmony with like the entire colony, the entire troop. There's like 50 birds that all live together and have like their roles all, figured out. And so they're not just being busy for the sake of being busy. They're being busy and doing what they need to do in the present moment in order to connect with a larger harmony. So, each movement is contributing to pollination or nest building or balance and just interdependence with the world around them. So, in the same way that this gate reminds us that our presence and our moment to moment expression might seem small or unplanned, we can actually realize through looking at the animal kingdom, the insect world, that when we are present with moment to moment expression, and we're not just being busy for the sake of being busy, that moment to moment expression is actually weaving into something much larger than ourselves. And we may not see the whole pattern, but we're definitely part of it. So it can be easy to be afraid to get into the present moment, into the now. Even with the popularity of that Eckhart Tolle book, The Power of Now, I think there's still like a misunderstanding of like, well, how can you be in the now? Don't you have to plan for the future? Don't you have to think about like what you've learned from the past? And this gate is all about recognizing that every word that we speak from a place of truth, every authentic gesture, every movement that is truly rooted in our present authenticity is like one of those tiny movements that ripples into the collective and strengthens the web of life and connection. So this week, Gate 20 asks all of us to practice that kind of radical presence, be in the now, and know that the now is contributing to the larger patterns. And when we let go of scripting and just tune into what wants to move through us right now, we can become very clear channels for truth. Which brings me to Saturn entering Aries this Saturday, a big astrological transit, and that's the last thing I'll talk about this week. This is a huge shift. Saturn's leaving Pisces after almost 3 years there, and it's entering the sign of the Ram, the first sign of the zodiac, the fire sign of Aries, where it will stay for the next 2.5 years. And Saturn shift into a new sign always really brings in a new chapter of collective and personal responsibility and structure and boundaries in the sign that it enters and in the area of your personal chart, the house of your personal chart where it's entering. So you can look to your birth chart and see where Aries is and what house it's in. For me, it's in the 9th house of higher education and travel and long journeys. And so Aries is the spark of initiation. It's that infancy place in the zodiac. It's the head. It's the sprout coming up out of the earth. And so with Saturn entering this initiatory place of the zodiac, this is a time when we're being asked to mature in how we take action, how we spring into action, how we lead ourselves. Aries is very associated with leadership, and also how we respond to life directly and courageously. Saturn is a maturing force. Big Daddy Saturn is, as he is known, calls upon us to put on our big girl pants and our big boy pants and really like level up to a new level of maturity and responsibility to others. Saturn is the outermost visible planet of the solar system, and so it represents boundaries because it is the boundary of the traditional solar system, the last of the 7 traditional planets before we were able to witness through telescopes Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, the outer Plutoid planets. There's a lot of Plutos, is what I'm trying to say. But everything out past Saturn, it was not visible to the naked eye. It is not visible to the naked eye, and so it is the boundary of the known universe. And in that way, the physics of it kind of relate to the mythology of it, which is about creating boundaries and structures for our existence. So it's fascinating that Saturn is entering Aries in gate 25, which is that in first thunder gate of the wheel of the year, the human design wheel. And it's known as the gate of innocence, which sits in the G center, the heart of identity and direction. Gate 25, we talked about, it's the spring equinox gate. So we talked about it a few episodes back. And it's all about unconditional love, which is not in the romantic sense, but as a pure state of being. Gate 25, this first gate of Aries season, where Saturn and Neptune are meeting, is asking us to trust life and to trust our essential nature and to act from a place of sincerity and open-heartedness rather than strategy. Saturn also will be conjunct the asteroid Ceres as it enters Aries, which I occasionally talk about asteroids. I'm getting more and more into them, but not all the time will I mention them. But as it's going to be a direct conjunction with Saturn, this adds a layer of nurturance and nourishment and the cyclical rhythms of care to this ingress into Aries. And again, not far from that point is Neptune in Aries, which is the planet of dreams and dissolving boundaries. So we have the planet of boundaries and structures meeting the planet of dissolving boundaries. And so Neptune with Saturn there is a little bit of a conundrum. It's a little bit of a pickle. We have like an outer planet that's kind of non-visible and it's all about like the sea, and Saturn, which is all about kind of like building things up in an earthy way. So yeah, it'll be an interesting time to have these very close together in the first degree of the zodiac. Even though their exact conjunction won't happen till early 2026, February 2026, the presence of Neptune in the same neighborhood is really coloring this transit with a sense of spiritual growth and a need to release illusions around who we think we have to be in order to belong or succeed. So I don't see it as like canceling each other out, boundaries and boundarylessness. It's more like ebb and flow, a dance of releasing old ways of being and then simultaneously creating new ways of being. It's like there's no time to waste. As something is washed away to sea, like build a new sandcastle or figure out a new way. That is the moment that we're in right now. It's a real seed planting moment. It's again the proverbial new moon, and it will take time to grow into something really solid and structured. But this ingress and this conjunction is infused with the fire of Aries, and Saturn takes around 29 years to orbit the sun. So this is the completion of a cycle that began 29 years ago. And if your Saturn is in Aries, welcome to your Saturn return. Saturn returns are times of meeting up with kind of the boundaries of our existence and saying, okay, time to level up your responsibility. So with Saturn and Aries as the first sign of the zodiac, we're all being asked to begin again, to create new structures for our lives that lie ahead in a more mature form than in the last cycle, and from a deeper place of knowing as we spiral onward through the universe. So, bringing it all together, I'm sure I'll say plenty more about Neptune and Saturn in Aries as the conjunctions and the retrogrades back and forth continue to happen up until February 2026. And so, we'll definitely talk about this again soon. It's a major one, but I'll leave it there for now. We're stepping into Gemini season this week with our lungs open, our minds curious, and with our spirits a little bit more seasoned. The suns move into gate 20 this week as we begin this new season of the twins. Reminds us that presence is power. Just think about the bee and the flower, digging in, taking a nap. Um, Saturn's move into Aries reminds us that courage is a slow burn, not a quick flash, and that it's time to create new containers to hold us, even if they are simultaneously feeling like they're being washed away. It's good practice. The sandcastle metaphor, I'll go back to that. It's like you build a beautiful castle, the tide comes in and washes it away, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to keep building another castle. Maybe move a little bit back, maybe move to the side, see where the tide is coming into, take note of where the tides are shifting at this moment in time. That's kind of where we're at with this building process over the next couple of years, where Neptune and Saturn are co-present in Aries. And after that, Neptune will stay in Aries and Saturn will move on into Taurus, and it'll be a lot more stable and structured after 2.5 years. But during this period, it's initiation and it's courage to not stop and not slow down and not to be curious about reinvention. So as you move through the week this week, notice the sparkly pollinating conversations that light you up and the ideas that feel really juicy, the words that want to be spoken without being polished or without being hidden away. And yeah, speaking from your authentic center point is key this week. As is breathing into the moment. Take a lot of time to breathe over the course of Gemini season. Just remember that Gemini and the lungs are interconnected, and Gemini being the twins, the lungs come in pairs of two, and it's about this interplay between the one thing and another, the body and the environment. And another key theme of the week is self-assurance. Just be self-assured that where you are in this moment, where you're being called to be in this present moment, is enough. And there's many flowers that are out there waiting, but they're all connected through a beautiful root system, through a pollination system. So self-assuredness in your choices of where to be in the moment, as we have lots of options of where to be as Gemini season begins. That's a key practice as well. So I'm going to leave you with a short little somatic practice for the week. It's pretty simple. It is called the bee breath. And what you want to do for this practice this week is find a quiet moment to sit and close your eyes and take a deep inhale through your nose. And then on each exhale, hum gently with your lips gently closed, not too tightly. But let that sound vibrate through your chest, through your skull, through your body, through your whole being. And it's super simple, but this practice really helps to tone the vagus nerve and bring you into the here and now. This is a practice that you can use all throughout Gemini season, as there's a lot of airy energy and a lot of new energies coming in after groundedness of Taurus season. So after a few minutes of inhaling through the nose and then humming gently on each exhale, you can let the humming fade into silence and just sit once you feel a cultivation of that kind of buzzing vibration in your body. And once you settle into that stillness, you can place one hand on your throat gently and the other on your heart. And just really ask yourself, what truth wants to come through me today? Listen without rushing it and let it emerge like honey. So the bee breath keep coming back to that. For me, it really helps with that feeling of self-assuredness. And it's really not complicated, just humming. It's a tried and true, across many cultures, it's a tried and true way of regulating and getting more connected with the present moment. So be here now, be present, and that is enough. And with that, I will sign off, and I will see you soon with some special announcements and with next week's forecast. So have a beautiful entry to Gemini season, and you can always find me on astrosomatics.substack.com to get this in your inbox every Monday, or on astrosomatics on Instagram, or Cycles of Time podcast on Instagram is where I spend most of my social media time. Please share this podcast with anybody who you think might benefit from it, who's interested in the cycles of the seasons and attuning your lived experience with the Wheel of the Year. I always appreciate any comments or likes or feedback that you have. So thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you again soon.